Hello, I'm Lori Niles at Violinist.com, and I am here with Pirastro people to talk about Pirastro Strings. And this is Annette, who is the owner. Tell us your whole name, please.
My name is Annette Müller-Zierach. I'm sorry that it causes trouble.
Here from Germany.
Actually, it's my mother's company, and her name is Eva Pirazzi. And I think you know the name from, the strings or some of the strings.
She's going to tell us again because I cannot get enough of this story. How did this amazing, cover of these strings happen?
Yeah, actually, my father is a trained painter, and he made a picture of my mother. And so, we thought, how can we name our next string? And so we came up with actually her maiden name. So her name is also Eva Müller-Zierach, but her maiden name is Pirazzi. So, the Italian descent from, 1798. So last year we had our, 225th anniversary. And then we thought, how can we name it nicely? So we have Eva, the E for Eva, the V for Volker, my father's name, the A for Annette, which is my name, and the H for Henning, my brother's name. So that's why Eva is spelled with an H.
So there it goes. So Annette, thank you. She is going to have a seat, and I'm going to geek out here with Ed Mingo, who is the USA representative for Pirastro.
Yeah.
And well, tell me a little bit about how they came to be, and what year was it that Eva's started?
Okay, Eva's were introduced in 2000.
Okay.
But going back a little bit, what happened around 1998, a new material was actually introduced to the market. It was an advanced synthetic. It was a synthetic that was actually introduced to the market to resist heat and friction. So the inventor of this thought, heat and friction, that's what a bow does to a string. So
Makes
this is going to make a great string. So when we received the new material, we actually decided to make our first string with this new material was called the Obbligato.
The Obbligato, very interesting. And
that was introduced in 1998, and that was made. The whole idea of Obbligato was to sound as close to our olive gut string as we could get with a synthetic. So it was a lower tension string. It was very warm. Everything you've experienced with Obbligato, very warm, a nice under ear tone. Pretty easy to play, and like you said, you're more of an orchestra player, not a soloist, so you want to blend more. So that was the whole idea behind Obbligato.
They're not quite as loud, and so I started using Obbligato strings as an orchestral player, and I really like them quite a lot. Yeah.
So after Obbligato was introduced, it did well, but players were like, I need it to be a little bit louder. I'm a soloist. I want to project more. So our head of R&D decided to go completely the opposite direction with it. Eva Pirazzi was meant to be a soloist string. It was meant to project. It was meant to have a tighter bow resistance so you could dig in and get more dynamics out of it. And that was the whole idea behind Eva Pirazzi. And when that was introduced in 2000, as you know, that really kind of changed the entire market. We were getting calls that Eva was selling violins. It was the players. I've had this string on there for a certain amount of time. I put Eva's on it. The violin sold the next day because it had a bit more tension. It had a lot more clarity, a lot more volume. It was waking up some instruments that might not have reacted the same with different strings. So,
and just to be sure, Eva Pirazzis, you can put them on a fractional violin.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And they're actually really good with electric instruments as well because of the higher tension. It actually really works well with those piezo pickups.
Okay.
So what happened was after we made Obbligato and Eva, we had basically two extremes. We had a very gut-like string with a lot of color and nuance, and we had a very powerful string with a lot of projection. So taking a quick step back, the string we made after that was called the Eva Pirazzi Gold, which was the package you're holding together before. The Eva Pirazzi Gold was meant to kind of bridge the gap between Obbligato and Eva Pirazzi. People thought Eva Pirazzi Gold was supposed to be Eva more powerful. It was actually meant to be Eva with more color and nuance.
Okay.
So it was made to be in between. So that kind of was that bridge. So it was made to Eva Pirazzi Gold was have most of the power of Eva Pirazzi and a lot of the color and nuance of Obbligato.
Okay.
The string you're using today is a string called the Perpetual, and those were introduced around 2017, 2018. The original version of Perpetual was the medium, And the medium set was actually meant to have the same volume as Ava, but have a little less tension, but an easier bow response and a little bit more clarity. All the older strings, Obbligato, Ava Parazzi Gold, even the Violinos, they're all kind of variations of that Pirastro sound. With Perpetual, we wanted a little bit more clarity and a little bit more easier bow response. So when the Perpetual came out, people were like, it had a lot of the volume and it had a quicker bow response, so it really, attracted players like Vadim Repin was using them.
Yeah.
Quite a few violas were using them. But then when we came out with what happened during the pandemic was we had a lot of players going from symphony halls to apartments, and they wanted something with a more pleasant under-ear sound but still could project if they needed to play a symphony gig again.
Right.
So what we did is we came out with the Perpetual cadenzas, and as you pointed out, it has a little bit of the Obbligato DNA in it.
Okay.
When we used to make different gauges of Obbligato, it used to be Obbligato, we had the Stark, which is a strong version or a heavy gauge, and we used to have a Weich version or a Weich version, which is a lighter gauge. And when we discontinued the Weich and the Stark on Obbligato, a lot of players couldn't find a match for the Weich.
Which is to say, what does Weich mean?
It's a lighter gauge. It's a thinner tension.
Okay.
Not thinner. It's a thinner gauge, but lighter tension. So
softer.
Softer, yes.
Softer.
Definitely
Okay.
softer. So when people couldn't find a replacement for that, our head of R&D was like, well, I can still make the Obbligato Weich, but I can change it a bit and give it a little bit more. So we made the Perpetual cadenza, which is actually a lower tension version of the medium cadenzas. And what this did was it actually gave us a tension almost of a gut string. So it's a very light tension, very easy to play because it's got the Perpetual DNA, the quicker bow response. So it's kind of has the core tone of the Obbligato Weich, but with the newer windings that we use on the Perpetual.
Yeah.
So it gives you a nice even bow sound, very even across the board, very easy to play, and because it's a lower tension, you still get a nicer projection out of it. And players, Obbligato is meant to sound as close to the olive as possible. Players are telling us this sounds even closer.
That's interesting. And I'll say this is the second time, 'cause I have strings for like 6 months. I can't put that many on in a given year, 4 to 6 months. So this is the second time I've had these strings for like a period of time, and the big thing that I notice about them is sort of this consistency from string to string. And I don't know if you're going to be able to get, I can play like a scale or something. So don't be critical, okay? If I play a note out of two, but so like So what I notice is it does sound like the same person talking string to string. Like it doesn't sound like, I've had the experience where you have one string that's like, da 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 da, and you just feel like it's 4 different characters or something. And this one is like sort of unusual. Like that's the main like standout thing I would say that I notice about it. And then it is making my violin sound really pretty. I mean, it's just like a pretty nice.
And one of the players who's using it right now, she's Isabella Faust.
Oh, she's amazing.
So
I have been listening to her.
She's going to be playing at Carnegie Hall very soon. And she actually plays a lot of historical instruments. So she plays Passione, which is a gut string, on most instruments. And she's been using the cadenza because it feels like a gut string to her. So for her modern instrument, she's playing cadenzas. And then on her historical instrument, she's playing, Passione gut strings.
How interesting. Wow. And tell me a little bit about like your star players that you have like playing, like what their preferences are.
That changes.
Like, is it like the Augustin Hadelich, right?
Augustin Hadelich's been using Ava Parazzi's for the longest time, mainly on the Strad.
The green ones?
The green ones.
The green ones.
Absolutely,
okay.
the green ones.
I think it's a Del Jesu.
Yeah.
Sorry, but
It could, yeah.
okay, so we've got Augustin Hadelich.
Vadim Repin. We have
Vadim. What does he play?
He's played them all at this point.
Oh, okay.
He was an Ava Parazzi user for a long time, and then he switched to Perpetual, and now he's actually using Ava Gold.
Ava Gold. Okay, all right.
Lila Josefowicz plays Ava Parazzi Gold.
Eva Perazzi Gold. And now she does a lot of modern works.
Yeah, and one of the interesting players that's using perpetual cadenzas right now is Sasha Maisky, which is Misha Maisky's son.
Okay.
And he was actually involved with the development of the cadenza because he had a very old Amati, and it didn't like higher tension strings. Some instruments don't like higher tension strings, so we actually, with his violin, he wanted something that had the tension of a gut string, but still gave him the projection he needed. So he was involved with the creation of the cadenza.
I get that because I have a 200-year-old violin, and it's had some restoration done to the top of it, and the back is intact. But I think maybe my instinct is sort of the same as far as like wanting the slightly, less tension.
Yeah, for years we've seen it was. For a while there, the orchestras wanted to be louder and louder and louder, and now it seems we're seeing a bit of a rollback. Eva Perazzi is still by far our most popular string, but you're seeing people wanting to experiment more and wanting to fill the room differently. The pandemic really changed quite a bit.
I wonder if it changed the way people hear things.
A little bit.
It did for me personally. I came out of it and I was like, I don't want so much sound. Like, I just didn't want to hear as loud of things. Although in the years since, I've done a lot of symphony gigs, and I feel like I'm maybe changing a little back, but it changed my ear.
One of the interesting things that happened with during the pandemic is the Eudoxa gut strings actually became very popular during the pandemic.
Really?
And we found
were those the very first?
That's our
gut
oldest
strings?
brand. That's not. Oh. It's our oldest brand that we make. Wasn't our very first gut string, but it's
that you still make.
It's our oldest one that we still make.
What was the first gut string that no longer exists? I'm just curious.
Well,
for historical
reasons, here's a good tidbit you'd like.
Okay.
So we came out in 1798. We're 225 years old. Who was our first endorsing artist?
I don't know who.
Paganini.
Paganini? What? Are you kidding? Well, what kind of strings did Paganini?
Well, he played plain guts because at the time we were making just plain gut strings. We were the first company to specify the string gauges because at the time you'd have to just mix and match to find. They just make strings of different gauges and then you have to sort them out for your instrument. So we were the first company to actually specify the string gauges, and we were the first company to actually use only one type of gut. Because back in the day, most butchers became string makers because they were, butchering food and then, using the guts to make sausage, and then they would. So we were the first. We only.
But it's
used
not
sheep.
Catgut, right?
No, it's never.
Even
been
though
catgut.
it's the word. The word is catgut, but it means something else, right? It's sheep.
We use sheep. Yes.
Okay.
Other companies do use beef, and in the past, they're using goat beef, whatever they were butchering for food, they would use to make strings. We were the first company to actually specifically use sheep. And we actually harvest all of our sheep from New Zealand.
Okay.
Because we made gut guitar strings for quite some time, and Segovia was actually one of our endorsing artists.
Segovia.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right, but you were saying something about Eudoxa strings when I interrupted you.
So what happened during the pandemic was, players were recording in their apartments, and if you're playing Evas or strings that were meant for a symphony hall in a small apartment with a microphone, they were overpowering the microphone.
Yeah.
Eudoxa, being a very nice, warm, round sound, was very mic friendly, so a lot of players were recording with Eudoxas during the pandemic.
Okay. Wow. And then people have been going back to.
Yeah, no, we saw a huge trend back to Eva Perazzi the last couple of years because. We're back in the symphony halls. We want to project again. We want to be loud again. So we're seeing quite a bit of that. The other thing that happened during the pandemic is a lot of players were taking pay cuts and not playing as much. So another one of the strings that became really popular for us during the pandemic, and it still strings is the tonica string, which is our nylon core string.
Okay.
And it's a more affordable string.
Yeah, that's good for students too. I mean,
it's a very. But we have entire orchestras in Eastern Europe, that use tonicas.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so that's a little bit about strings. Ed, thank you for talking to me today about this stuff. And please follow Violinist.com on YouTube and check out Pirastro's
The website
Perpetual cadenzas, and what is your website?
It's www.pirastro.com. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram, so if you want to check us out there.
Bye.